The Samurai Turned Pretty has returned with Season 3 Episode 9, and following the explosive wedding that saw Jeremiah walking away from Billy and her seeing Conrad at the airport whilst on her way to Paris, this episode was all about the aftermath of that and the question around who it is that she's going to end up choosing. Well, it turned out that there was actually a third option in all of this, the one she should have probably chosen at the start, and that was herself. With an ending that showed which side Belly picked, let's dive into this episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is the Samurai Turned Pretty Season 3 Episode 9 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Belly. The big question that we were left with at the end of the previous episode was, is she going to go up to Conrad at the airport? And as we saw, she didn't. She chose to get on that plane to Paris with the hopes of joining the program that she signed up for, but it didn't go as smoothly as she planned. When Billy got to Paris, we saw that the school had given up her spot, and she was misinformed about there being a place available, so it left her roaming the streets of Paris alone whilst waiting for a flight back to the US. At this point, Belly's mental state wasn't in a good place because she was fearful of what everybody would think of her back home, what Jeremiah thought, and what the others at Finch would think as well. So when her bag eventually got stolen, her AirTag that was inside of it that fell out at passport control allowed her to follow it to a rave that was taking place, and she managed to retrieve it. She was fixated on getting that bag back because it had the ring that Jeremiah gave her inside of it, something that she referred to as priceless. After meeting Gemma, Max, Celine and Benito, they tried to convince her to stay in Paris, but she didn't think that she initially would. However, once speaking with Jeremiah on the phone and him saying that he wanted her to go to the house in Cousins so that they could talk things over and pick back up where they left off, we saw that she made up her mind and decided that she was going to stay in Paris and focus on herself. To be honest, this is something that she probably should have done a long time ago, because being at the center of this love triangle that tore the family to pieces, being out there is probably a better option. However, I don't think that's going to be the end for her. I think that she's going to realize that Conrad is what she wants, and Conrad will be her endgame. There are still 2 episodes left, and I don't see a world where Belly doesn't end up with one of the brothers. Belly said that she doesn't know what her future is, but rebuilding is always possible. As she said that, she was looking up at Notre Dame, the cathedral that caught fire in 2019 and was still undergoing construction, which showed that things can be rebuilt, and in Belly's eyes, that was her. So I think she's going to be staying in Paris for a while, whilst working out what it is that she truly wants in life. Conrad. Is it wrong that I still feel just a little bit bad for Conrad? I was Team Conrad all the way, and even though he was the person that caused the wedding to go terribly wrong, he was feeling the pain of losing the love of his life and also his brother. Conrad didn't know that the wedding was called off because he didn't actually see Belly at the airport. It was his father who called him and told him. As we know, Conrad has a bit of a hero complex and wants to always be the person to save the day. So after being told to steer clear of Jeremiah, he waited at the house in Cousins because he wanted to be there for him when maybe he eventually came around. But that was something that never happened. We actually saw Conrad's father being supportive for the first time in the entire show, and he drew a similarity in the behavior that he had when he was the problem, and now that Conrad was the problem. Saying how he should leave Jeremiah and give him space because he knows that he has people around him that love him and that will be there to support him. Like Conrad had when his mother was dying and his father wasn't around. The line of dialogue that stuck out to me most with Conrad was when he said how he knew that his brother was hurting so much, but there was simply nothing that he could do about it, showing that he couldn't fix this problem because he was the actual problem. Conrad's arc concluded with him being told by Jeremiah that Belly was in Paris and that he wanted him to leave Cousins and stay as far away from him as possible, showing that in Jeremiah's mind, Conrad was pretty much dead to him. Conrad packed up his car and it seemed like that was going to be it between him and his brother, which I feel it will be for a while. However, with him finding out that Belly is in Paris, I genuinely wouldn't put it past Conrad to book a flight to Paris and end up meeting up with Belly and confessing his love to her all over again, but this time in the City of Love. It's cliche, but it would work so well for the show. All of Belly's friends know the story of Conrad and Jeremiah, so when he shows up, they'll know exactly how Belly will truly be feeling. Jeremiah won't like it, but like Conrad said in the previous episode, he wanted Belly to know that all of that was worth it. She's all that matters to him, no matter what it costs. Jeremiah. Now, whilst I did feel sorry for Conrad, I did also feel bad for Jeremiah too. He was like a lost puppy in this episode, and the upset that he had was truly felt through the screen. He hadn't heard from Billy, and you could see that he was basically waiting by the phone for her to ring for the entire episode. Jeremiah and Taylor's interaction was probably the most wholesome one out of the entire episode. Jeremiah basically mentioned how he couldn't see his life without Billy, and that she was his whole life. Taylor responded and said, "She's not your whole life, and if she is, then she shouldn't be." This was so true, and I feel it kind of connected to that immaturity that we've seen from Jeremiah throughout the entirety of the season. He doesn't really have a life outside of Billy. He didn't want her going to Paris, and he only proposed to her to get over the whole cheating scandal that happened between them. So Taylor quite literally spoke some truth to him, truth that he needed to hear, but he didn't take it on board. When he received the phone call from Billy and she said that she was going to be staying in Paris after basically saying that he wanted to talk things over and get back with her, because it was the news that he didn't want to hear, he told her to stay there and to never call him again. I also thought a level of immaturity in the character came when the only time in the episode where he got dressed was to put on a front to Conrad, and to basically tell him that he knew something that he didn't know about Billy and that she was in Paris. The fact that he said, "She didn't choose me, but she didn't pick you either," showed that living in Conrad's shadow throughout the entirety of his life was something that was still plaguing him, and even in this moment, he saw a small victory in the fact that at least Billy wasn't with him. Taylor and Steven. To be honest, there's not that much to say about Taylor and Steven, other than the fact that they ended up back together. The biggest thing for Steven was that he wanted the version of Taylor that had been there for him the past few days. The one that was there for her friends and was there for him in a way like she'd never been before, and this was something that she promised to do if they got back together. Taylor is probably the most caring character in the show, so it's interesting that she was never really able to be like that with Steven. The both of them said that they loved each other after realizing that their relationship was so much more normal than the love triangle. They both said that and how they wanted to give it another try, and then they got back together. So I am actually really happy about that, because if anybody deserved a happy ending in this show, it was definitely Taylor. My review of the episode. I thought this was a solid episode of the show. I thought it followed on from the destructive wedding really well, and the fact that it was over an hour helped with that. Considering we saw the episode across continents, it didn't impact the storytelling capability that much, and I thought it was executed in a seamless way. If I'm being honest, I kind of preferred watching the aftermath of the wedding rather than Billy being in Paris, but I think that's just because it's a new environment and a new group of characters, so it might just take an episode to settle in properly. In terms of the performances, with regards to the whole cast, I think collectively this could be the best performed episode in the entirety of the season. I thought Conrad and Jeremiah's emotions were infectious and they were so easy to get on board with. Taylor and Steven's story just allowed me to have a big smile on my face because the love between them was so clear to see, and Billy's conflict was also present too. I quite liked the fact that for the most part of the episode the trio were separated and we got to see how they were dealing with their issues on an individual level. I think it allowed for the emotions to cut through more and for it to feel a bit more immersive, rather than just seeing anger and rage between the brothers. Honestly, I can't believe we've only got 2 episodes left until the show finishes for good. Belly has to make her way back at the end of the next episode, surely. That will leave a big finale for us to hopefully see who she ends up with, or if she's going to decide to just stay on her own. So, there you have it, The Summer I Turned Pretty Season 3 Episode 9 Ending Explained.